Let's come back to our conversation here in studio. And I mean, isn't it confusing? Because there are two issues, and the judge there, she seemingly wants to separate these two issues, but they keep coming back. The contempt of court, but there's also the issue to do with the doctor's strike. How tough of a situation is she in? Because on one hand, she seemingly wants to have this deadlock or a deal brokered, but on the other hand, she has to still act as a judge.
Yeah. I think the judge, first of all, I think she put herself in that position.
She did?
Yeah, which position she wasn't supposed to be in at the start of it. Because the contempt application, yes, court orders were disobeyed, but then you have to look at the bigger picture. As now, as she put it, she suspends the sentence because of a public interest. That should actually override every other thing. And it's not just public interest for demonstration, but then it's something to do with people's lives.
Right.
People are dying. That is something she should have done. And then you realize when she was suspending the sentence, she further goes ahead and says that the court has powers to enter into the arena of negotiation to be an arbitrator.
If they're allowed to.
Even if they're allowed to, that is a discretion that the judge has.
Okay.
A case study, we remember when the teachers was on strike, the Justice Ndumanderi actually brought the two parties together and told them, this is what you're negotiating, this is what the government gave teachers, and this is what the teachers want. Why don't you give them what they wanted? And it was a big battle which ended at the Supreme Court.
Right.
So the judge still has powers to call these parties together and find out exactly where is the gridlock, where is the problem.
All right, Duncan?
My take on that, Betty, will be that the judge, as I've said, is in a very dicey position. No one can envy being there. She must practice Solomonic wisdom because, as we have indicated and you've rightly reiterated, the law is the law. And you cannot actually oust it for any reason, not even public interest per se. Ideally, looking at it, public interest here will be a fallacy because the doctors are looking after their own interest. What has actually been coming out in terms of what I've seen on social media, trying to say it's an issue of the healthcare system and all that, that is a fallacy. The issue here is about their pay, their personal welfare. That will only benefit them and their families. Therefore, it cannot be gainsaid that that is about an issue of, or that the public should delve into.
Okay.
Teachers also were actually on strike, but it was about their welfare. We cannot, as much as it affected the education system, we cannot actually say that now it becomes a matter of public interest and we put the law aside and that is it. Because tomorrow, lawyers will also decide to go on strike. They also play a very important role in the administration of justice. You cannot say each and every career, even you may decide to go on strike.
Well,
people will say it's public interest and you are supposed to be disseminating information to us and we'll have to put the law aside. Therefore, she has to maintain a very delicate balance in terms of maintaining the law and the respect of the law and the respect of courts and court decisions.
All right.
But on the other hand, and that is now where my learned colleague is welding, there's that issue that ideally you should still live in the reality that something else is happening outside. My decision, if I follow the law strictly, may also be counterproductive. So that is what she's trying to say. And what I would want to remind Kenyans is that even if this strike is called off today or tomorrow, it doesn't mean that these people will not have committed the acts of contempt.
Will that be now overlooked if they end the strike? Will the court say, let's forget about that?
Now, that is where the court has discretion, but it cannot just overlook it per se.
Okay.
This is a criminal act. After you have been sentenced, you have a right to mitigate and to say A, B, C, D. Then the court can have the power of saying, yes, you committed it, we find that you're in contempt, but at least your actions have demonstrated A, B, C, D, and therefore will give you a linear sentence. And that is what the court may actually do. But it doesn't mean that the moment you purge that contempt, that we forget all about what had happened
Everything
and
else.
the fact that you're in contempt of court.
I want to hear your thoughts on the fact that you have this very senior government officials, and we've talked about this before, but I mean, it makes sense for us to also talk about it now. State officials, starting with the CS for Interior, Joseph Nkaiseri, you have all these senior government officials who have the contempt of court hanging on their heads. But here we are going after doctors who really are out for a good cause. What is this saying about this whole system? Is it fair that they even have to be taken through this, back and forth? Yet there are people who are leaders, but there's nothing.
It's quite a very interesting scenario. But then on that, I think the court is not to blame. Now, that one squarely comes back to the executive who control the National Police Service. The court can give orders, but then it's not upon the court to enforce those orders.
Right.
Those orders are directed towards some people who are supposed to enforce it. For instance, when a contempt order is issued, the court has already issued an order, but then the court won't go and arrest the people. The police has to arrest. For instance, if the person cannot come himself to court the way the doctors officials came, then a warrant arrest is going to be issued. Case study is Kibicho, the permanent secretary for Interior. But then now the National Police Service has refused to to obey the directive that they were given by Justice Odunga, and therefore the orders can be given, but then the enforceability is also hard.
Okay.
But then it brings a very interesting scenario on how Kenyans think and regard the law. It means that the big people, the bosses there, still have the big man syndrome where they think they are untouchable. They are laws unto themselves.
Okay.
The court can issue orders, but then they won't obey. So they choose which laws to obey. And then now when it comes to a smaller person like the union officials, then they have to face the music. So actually, it actually makes a mockery of the whole judiciary system.
All right, Duncan, I'd like to hear your thoughts. If today the doctors, were in court and they proceeded to serve their jail sentence, what would have been the implication of that?
The implications would have been looked at in two ways. One, in terms of the impending negotiations.
Right.
It will have actually thrown a spanner into the works in terms of those negotiations. There will be no one else who will come to the table to negotiate. There will be no one else who will actually want to take up these positions, even if they were to do elections tomorrow, to replace them even in interim positions, because everyone will be saying, I'll be languishing in jail for a cause that, yes, is worthy, but I'll suffer and my family will suffer.
Right.
Therefore, the government will have no one to negotiate with. And in actual sense, the person who will suffer is the common mwananchi down there,
Still.
who will not have services and they're actually suffering. On the other hand, it will actually bring the court into focus in terms of how wise a judge or a court will be in such a situation, or would have been expected to be, because it will mean that the court would have actually been giving a decision outside the realities of the world, outside the realities of this particular issue. And that is a very bad thing, because courts day in, day out are influenced by the realities surrounding an issue. You saw the court in England when it was dealing with the Brexit issue. It didn't matter that that majority had already voted to move out of the EU. However, it was informed by the realities that there are also other issues pertaining to it, well informed by the law. And when it was giving this decision, there was a balance. If you look at the decision that was given by the judge the other day about title deeds, it gave a decision and said that these title deeds, yes, are irregular. But the reality is that that decision alone will actually have a very bad effect in terms of confidence that people will have with title deeds and the regime at lands.
Okay.
And that is why he gave a 1-year period for the government to actually regularize. It means that this court was alive to the realities that its decision would actually have and the impacts.
All right, let's talk about the 5 days. Once this 5-day period lapses, will we see another extension? And does the judge seemingly have information that probably we don't know? Because, 5 days to say that this has to end in 5 days, it's so structured. It's so structured. What is your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
To insinuate that the judge knows some information that we don't know.
Because it's 5 days. Look at it, 5 days.
Actually, it is interesting. What informs 5 days? Why not 1 week? Why not 2 weeks? But then you realize when she's suspending this sentence and giving them 5 days, she actually says that I'm not giving you room for negotiation, but to call off the strike within 5 days.
So she's even telling them what to do, directing them what to do. Okay. So when you do that again, it still goes back to twisting union officials, telling the government, you people can rest easy. These guys are going to jail after 5 days after all, which I think is living outside reality. You don't force people in a negotiation to call off a strike. That is the only thing they can do to get whatever the interest they're fighting for. Okay. Yeah. Duncan?
There was an application for review by the doctors, and this review, one of the prayers was to suspend this particular period that had been given. The judge actually, in her wisdom, has suspended it for 5 days.
Yeah.
But ideally, the government has not put in its response, and the Council of Governors has not put in their response.
Yeah.
But in actual sense, it tells you that she has already granted part of the prayers in that particular application. And that tells me that even after 5 days, now the doctor will be sure that it's very hard for them to be jailed on this particular account. And in actual
Really, wouldn't it be easy because you've already been given, even Kenyans have seen that, you even given
Someone is
5
lenient.
more days,
Yeah,
surely, you know?
and the reason for that, Betty, is informed by the words that the judge used while she was granting that. She actually delved into the matter directly. This is what the other time she actually seemed not to want to do, to delve into the realities. She actually said, yes, now I want to hear what the government will say. I want to hear what the doctors will say. I want to even be part of it. You see, that means that now it is a collective thing. It's not like you just want to blame the doctors without looking at the realities that actually led to them not obeying your order. And that is what informs my decision or my thinking that the judge, come the 31st, regardless of what will happen, may still not find it easy to actually decide to jail them. She'll actually want to come out as a very good judge who has practiced Solomonic wisdom, who has actually midwifed the process.
But how does that help then? The situation, I mean, Solomonic wisdom has been practiced, but wouldn't it complicate things? Because does she give an extension to this sentence again?
I think if she does give an extension, which there's very likelihood she's going to do, then it's also going to fall back on her. It's like, you can disobey the court, I can give my orders, but I'm not so serious about it. So it's going to make people actually question why she even gave the orders in the first place if you don't want them to be implemented.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is, let's talk about representation. As professions in this serious career, like Duncan mentioned earlier, do you think that the doctors had good representation from the get-go? We've seen Mutula Kilonzo and Hassan Omar today, being part of the process. But talking about the representations, because you would understand the process better, how has it been since the get-go? Will they have, if it was any different, will we be in this situation right now? Duncan? I know it's a tough question, but let me just hear your thoughts.
That's a very tough question, and my colleague will tell you. However, because we are all trained in different ways, and however, our strategy may be different.
Right.
I may think that my strategy would have been better, but there are many ways to kill a rat. So I may not fault any strategy that was used, but what I may say is that the input of Mutula Kilonzo Jr. and Omar Hassan is actually very important for that particular team. Because now it brings in the seriousness it deserves. So
it was not serious from the get-go?
No. If you look at most matters, and we've discussed this before, and you had the AG say that the more serious, like the more senior an advocate is in a matter, especially a corruption one, the bigger the loot on this other end. However, it shows that these particular people want to stamp some authority in terms of their representation. And you had the senators actually issuing statements which was actually supporting the position of the doctors. But by that, it actually is telling the court that it's not only a legal issue.
Right.
Even to us in Parliament, it's a national issue. It's something we are taking interest in, and we are also watching your decision. And you actually know that when there comes a time where these particular individuals apply to be the chief justices of this country or the deputy, their names are forwarded to Parliament. Parliament discusses these people. So the reality that my decision will actually be with me for the entire life of my judicial life is actually real.
Is a reality.
Yeah.
So do you think that the presence of the two senators sort of like informed the decision that has been there today, that the judges maybe thought, wow, now this is now very serious?
Of course, to some extent, however small it is, to some extent. It's not just about the doctors, it's also politics at play too. First, the senators are the custodians of devolution. Health is a devolved function in this country. And therefore, these two senators sit in the health committee of the Senate.
Right.
And therefore, them coming to play a part in the negotiation actually added the doctor the psych to move ahead and make it actually a national issue. By them coming to court, I don't want to say really intimidating the judge, but then as my learned colleague says, is to tell the judge, come back to reality.
Okay.
Yeah, this decision is going to stick with you.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds like a threat, but anyway, moving forward. I'd like to hear your comments as we close. I'd like to hear your comments about the Chief Justice David Maraga today. He's launching his strategic plan, and we'll go for a short break and then we'll come back because I'd like to hear your thoughts on that one. Is it a beautiful document and with no life, or what do you think about that? All right, so we'll take a break here on News Center. Thank you so much for staying with us. Remember that our top story is the happenings or the ongoings with the doctors' strike. Today they got some reprieve. They got 5 more days to basically end the strike. All right, so we'll come back shortly. Don't go away.